Hi and welcome back to another video of jPlay. I'm Marcus and I have to admit it's been quite a long time since I was able to record a video. And again, I have to disappoint you. This will not be a full playthrough here, as I will preview another game that's currently on Kickstarter, and this is Epoch Early Inventors. Of course, you're looking at prototype components, but some of the stuff already looks pretty polished to me, especially those landscape tiles. I think I would show them to you when I do some demo rounds as usual. And what it is all about in Early Inventors here, you will be taken back to the start of the civilization and you take over the role of the clan leader, and really what you're going to do is to move your camp with your tribe basically over the landscape. So you're trying to explore those. So right now most of the tiles are still face down, only those 4 tiles are currently available, and you will try to invent new technology, for example like this spear, or simply new abilities like tanning here, which will provide you refined or processed resources, which are pretty important for some later inventions in the game. A game of Epoch starts somewhere at the Mesolithicum, goes over the Neolithicum, and finally ends in the Bronze Age, as you can see here. There are different time tracks depending on how many players you play the game with, and today I will walk you through some rounds of a 2-player game, because it really doesn't matter if you're playing this game with 2, 3 or 4 players. There are some mechanisms which allow you to, let's say, balance out the different amount of players, and of course you do have a lot more player interaction when playing with 3 or 4 players, because this is really something that is, let's say, pretty unique to this game. You are really encouraged and allowed to do trade with your other players, and you also can, for example, use the technologies or abilities that another player has been, let's say, invented in an earlier round, which is really unique and pretty cool in this game. Each player starts the game with one of those camp tiles here, and there is already a difference which you can see. So there is, let's say, 2 spaces that are for easy mode, which allow you to carry more items. I think today I will play it on the normal or advanced mode. I think it's really the normal mode that refers to easy. So we're playing the advanced mode here, and each player already starts with 2 of those victory points. So those are these status points. The status points exactly are once the victory points themselves, and are also, let's say, some kind of a currency in this game, because you can use them to actually trade or use the other technologies. Also pretty neat. Then each player has those little, what are those called? Let me see. I think these are the offer tokens, right? 12 of those food tokens, and some resources like the antler, the skin, and the tendon. And then we are basically good to go. We will start in round 1 of the Mesolithicum and will end the game after round 20. There are conditions which allow you to that the game will end a little bit earlier. This is going back to those holy places here. So basically, at some point in time, all those tiles will be revealed, and then when all tiles are revealed, the game will last only for 3 more rounds. In most cases, in our scenarios so far, this was really more or less, we played it until the bitter end, but this definitely can change if you're getting more experience with this game and focus your actions a little bit better than we actually did. Before we get started, I think I have to show you what kind of overviews ship with Epoch here. So for once, we have the overview that show you what resources you get when you do a work action. Then you have an overview of what you get when you do some, for example, food gathering, fishing or hunting actions in this game. And this is again depending on where you do this kind of stuff. And on top of this, there is this nice booklet here which will explain all the, let's say, actions in this game in more detail. And for some of the stuff you really need this booklet. So for example, you don't have no clue how casting bronze or rope making would actually work without this little booklet here. Of course, in the rules it's also described here. These overviews can be a little bit, let's say, overwhelming. Let's put it that way. And this was really when I first read the rules. I checked all those overviews. I was really a little bit scared about this game, but really when you start playing this game, everything will become crystal clear. You will still use those overviews here from time to time, but most of the stuff will be, let's say, pretty much clear. So as of round 3, for example, you know that movement in a grassland area costs you 1 piece of food and stuff like that. Let's say blue will start the game, and the very first thing that you have to do is to place your camp on one of those 4 starting tiles here. So you see those tiles are already face up, and these are really the village tiles. I think they are referred to there. They're still the same as a normal grassland tile, but they don't provide any special ability or technology. So again, you can start your camp on any unoccupied space here on those 4. And I think for the first action, we will place our camp here on this village tile. And during your turn, you are allowed to perform exactly 1 action to develop 1 tile. Show you all of those things, and you are allowed to offer to 1 holy place. You can do those in any order you like. You can start whatever, perform an action, then offer to a holy place, then you can walk over the landscape again and develop a tile, stuff like that. This is something that's also important to mention. You can move as often as you would like during your turn. Of course, you have to pay the food that is, let's say, related to the landscapes you are moving on, but apart from that, you can really freely move over the landscape as much as you like. Let's start with some of the actions, and the actions that you are able to perform during your turn is work, gather, fish, hunt, butcher, or explore. And as I mentioned, all of those are, let's say, being mentioned, or let's say being described in this little booklet here. And I think the final game will ship with 2 of those. I also have 2, so this is pretty much a very cool prototype, so very complete, I have to tell you. But I think I will show you this booklet in more detail when I do the first real actions. At the start of the game, there's not much explored, as you can see. So right now we know that this is a water tile, we have a mountain tile here. Here we can invent the boots, here we can invent the spear. Both are not easy to invent, so you really have to provide a lot of high-end resources here, so you have a lot of those processed materials here, for example. So it's, let's say, always wise to start the game by just exploring a tile. And so this is the first thing I will want to show you. We want to explore, and you can explore up to 2 tiles that are adjacent to your current camp, and you are not allowed to move during this explore action. So you have to complete the whole full action, and then you can do whatever move again. So in this case, we could, for example, explore those 2 tiles, those 2 tiles, those 2 tiles, whatever is adjacent to you. And for each tile you're going to explore, you have to spend 1 food, but you're also getting 1 status or victory point for that. So I think we will do that twice. So we will pay 1 2 food cubes, and I think we will just explore those 2 tiles here. Again, these are prototype components, so they are pretty thin. I'm pretty sure the final version will be much nicer. So here we have rope making as a technology, and here we have the bow, which helps us doing a hunting action. And because blue has explored 2 new tiles, he gets 2 additional status points. So this was his main action. He could still walk, he could still develop a tile, or offer to a sacred or to a holy place. Right now he's not adjacent to a holy place, so he's not allowed to offer there or make an offer there, but he also doesn't have the proper resources here. But offering is really a great way to give you some additional victory points. Blue could now walk, maybe going up this direction, and in the next round explore 2 new more tiles, because these are really valuable status or victory points. But I'm thinking of really staying here on this tile and do a work action later on. Because of the work action, I might be able to get some of those flags here, which I could use later on to invent rope making. So I guess blue will call it a day, so it's now the yellow's player turn. The first thing he has to do during his very first round is to place his camp on the board, and of course you also have to use a space that's currently not in use, and I think I will just put my camp here on this village tile. I think he will also do an explore action, so he will also eat up 2 of those food tokens. Yum, yum, yum. And so we will reveal this grassland tile. That's a mining axe. That's pretty handy because it allows you to get some ore much easier, and also rope making. Okay, we have them twice on the board right now, but this isn't really a problem. All of those players can invent rope making, but sometimes it's really better to let's say to specialize on some of the technologies or abilities in this game, because you can always use the technologies from other players. So it's sometimes really not worth it all the players do have rope making, for example. But as he also explored 2 new tiles, he gets 2 status points as well. And I think I will do some moving. And I want to make sure that I will be the first one to discover this holy place here. So I really want to move my camp towards this direction. So I think really the best thing would be to move over to this grassland tile here. And it's also important to mention that I can only move on spaces or tiles that have been explored already. So I would not be able to just move to this tile here. I have to explore it first. I think there is an expansion already planned, which there's a role which allows you to also move over undiscovered tiles. But in this basic game which I have here, this is unfortunately not possible. Now I would check how much food do I need to eat to move onto a grassland tile, and here's the walk action. Basically I want to move on a grassland tile, and here I see 1 cube here, so I have to pay 1 food cube. So let's do that, and then I would be allowed to move onto this grassland tile here. I would still be allowed to develop a tile here. Again, I'm allowed to do 1 action, 1 development and 1 offering. But in this case, for the boots, for example, I would have to have 1 rope, 2 of those tendon, I believe that is, or 3 of those flax. And on top of this, I also need 2 leather and 1 piece of food. And really, leather is something which I can only get by the tanning special ability. I think I showed that to you in the earlier video, part of this video. Coming back to Blue, I think Blue definitely wants to go after this rope making here. And for rope making, he needs 2 of those flax tokens. How do I get those flax tokens? And here the other little overview comes into picture. So I check on which area I am, and here I see, hey, I need 1 working power to get 1 flax token. Basically there you could also get some clay or bronze or even wood, and I think stone and bronze, but on the grassland this is definitely way more. I need to put in more work power than just gathering some of this flax here. So I would now perform a work action, and for the work action I will roll 2 of those special dice. They show either a 0, a 1 or a 2, and these will, let's say, give me my actual working power. So let's roll those dice and see what happens. Okay, I have now 1 working point. That's definitely enough to get exactly 1 flax, but for the rope making I need 2 of those, so this 1 working point is definitely not enough. So let's check the handy dandy booklet here. So I have already rolled our 2 dice here, and this came back with only 1 working point. I could still decide to sweat. Sweat costs me 1 piece of food, and I think this is what Blue will do. So he pays 1 piece of food, and then he would be allowed to roll an additional die. Let's do that now. That's 2. Okay, that's way better than before. With 2 I would be allowed to gather 2 pieces of flax, which would be enough. But still, I could do put your back into it, and therefore for 1 additional piece of food I would gain 1 additional working point. But this is really the limit. So I can roll the dice once, I can roll the sweat once, and I could put you back into it with 1 food token for food cube. But for now I'm really thinking of stopping it because I still need some food. Or shouldn't I? Let's check what I could still get with an additional working power. And here I could get, for example, some bronze. Bronze is definitely important later on, but I think for now I will pass and I will just live with the 2 working power I have. So I could now gain 2 pieces of flax. I could also, let's say, decide to get 1 flax and 1 bronze. That's basically up to me. I could also decide to spend my 2 working power, you see that here, to get 1 piece of clay, but right now I'm after flax. So that's 1 and 2 flax. I've already reached my maximum for this advanced mode here, so I'm not allowed to use those. But as long as I'm not moving, I can collect as many resources as I like. Only if I move, then I have to take care about my carrying limitations here. And there are some nice technologies like the cart, which allows you to, I think, extend your carrying capacity by 8 or something like that. Those are really pretty useful technology, which will make your lives much easier. But coming back to the game board, I'm still allowed to develop 1 tile. How do I develop a tile? First of all, I have to be on it or I have to be adjacent to it. Right now I'm adjacent to rope making, so I think I can directly develop the tile from here. Now I have to pay 2 flax and 2 food. Luckily, I just collected 2 of those flax, so I will give them away immediately. I also eat up 2 additional pieces of food, and now I have developed rope making, which I can use once in a turn until the end of this game. And I also gain 3 victory points by the end of the game for this technology. As I said, other players can use this technology if they pay me for that. So for once they could give me 1 status point, and then they would be allowed to use all my technology for 1 turn. Or they could bargain with me if they don't want to give me status point, but maybe they see, hey, I see you need wood, for example. I can give you a wood if I'm allowed to use your rope making. Those kinds of bargains are definitely allowed and encouraged in this game. Now I could still move to this tile here. I could still use this tile here. So this is basically using my tiles. Is some kind of a free action which I can use anytime during my turn, but again only once. How would I do ropes now? Again, I'm checking the little booklet here, and then it says rope making, and I have to spend 2 flax plus a half food basically, which has been rounded up in all the instances here, but I could do that 3 times. So for example, if I would to spend 4 of those flax and still want food, it would give me 6 of those ropes here with only 2.5 cube again, which is rounded up. I would only gain 3 ropes, which is definitely quite a lot. So rather than moving, I think I will stay where I am, because in the next turn I could do another work action and try to gain additional flax, and then I would be allowed to make or create some actual ropes. Why would I do those ropes? For once, a rope allows me to reduce the amount of food I need to travel over mountains. Normally I have to spend 5 food cubes to move into a mountain area, but with a rope this is decreased to only 2. Of course, I always have to carry that rope with me. It's not just enough to have a rope making. I really need an actual rope in my inventory. And I can already see that I could invent the bow here, because when I spend 1 rope, some wood and a food cube, I could invent the bow. For once, the bow is another 3 victory points, and I can use it to do some actual hunting, which is also pretty important, because this is really the best way to gain me some skin. And again, with tanning, I could convert the skin into leather here. And those processed materials are often being used when you want to sacrifice or to offer at a holy place. For example, to offer at this holy place, you would have to spend 2 leather tiles, 2 skin tiles and 2 wood tiles, and this would give you 4 additional victory points by the end of the game. I think you already see how all the things are, let's say, being connected in this game. You need this resource to do this, or you need to have this technology to get processed material of this, and you're using these processed materials to offer or develop other technologies or inventions in this game. Though this is really all about optimizing your chain of materials, raw materials, in order to get more and more of those landscape tiles in order to gain the most amount of victory points. Okay, coming back to the yellow player, I think yellow wants to explore 2 new tiles. Again, he will pay or eat up 2 of those food cubes, yum yum yum, and I think I will go with this, grassland tile here. Here we have sowing. This is also, let's say, pretty good because sowing helps you to gain more food. This is really important. I think I will definitely go after this. And here we have pottery, and pottery is also good because it helps me to gather food, to do butchering, and to fish. So both of those technologies, and they're pretty early in the game, will really help you a big deal to upkeep your food supply. And I think the next aim or goal for yellow will be to develop pottery here. So for pottery I need 1 bronze. This is tough to find right now. We don't have bronze making developed yet, so I think I cannot rely on that. I could try to find 3 stones. 3 stones is something that I will find in a mountain area, like here for example, or I could go for 3 clay, and clay is something which you can either find in a swamp area or in a water area. Again, this overview helps you to identify on which tile you get which resources the easiest. I could stay on the grassland tile here, but I think I already mentioned in the grassland I have to pay 2 working power to gain 1 clay, but if I would move to a water tile I only need to have 1 of those work power here. And as I'm already planning to move closer to this sacred place here, because I would gain 3 additional status points by discovering it, I think it would be worth to just move down here to this grassland. And again, I would have to pay 1 food, and so I would be allowed to move to this grassland here. I nearly forgot. Yellow discovered 2 new tiles, so he gains 2 additional status points. Coming back to blue, blue definitely wants to go after this bow here. For in order to make a bow, he has to make some rope, and for rope he needs some flax. Luckily we decided to keep him on this grassland tile, so blue will simply do a work action again. So again, he will roll 2 of those dice. Oh, that was tough. Oh, 2 zeros. Okay, so I think he will have to sweat, so he has to pay 1 food. Let's roll a die. Okay, that's at least 1 point, and I think he definitely needs to put his back in it, and this would give him an automatic additional work point, and with those 2 points he will take 2 additional flax tokens. I think those were basically the same tokens he just spent to develop the rope making tile. And now he will do some ropes. First of all, he has to pay at least 2 of those flax tokens. Right now he only has 2, so let's pay those. He still has to pay a half a food cube, but again, there are no halves in this game, so you have to round up. This really makes the biggest return of invest is really when you do 6 of those ropes by paying 4 flax, but right now we only have those 2, which is definitely not really a problem. So let's pay an additional food cube, and now I would gain 3 ropes in return. And 3 ropes is a pretty big deal, to be honest. So right now I'm misusing those fields. Again, it's okay to collect them as long as I'm not moving, but the first time I'm actually moving, I have to get rid of at least 1 of those tokens here. I can still trade those, but I think I will come to that in a second. So I did my main action, which is working for those flax tokens. I did a free action. This is my rope making. Again, free actions are free actions. I can do them in any order, and I'm still allowed to develop another tile. And here we see I could still not create this bow here because I still need one piece of wood. And of course, the best way to find you some wood is to go into the forest. And luckily, a forest is not too far from me at where I am right now, so I think I could either move to the desert or here to this swampland. As walking into a desert would cost me 3 food, and walking into a swamp area only cost me 1 food. I think the math is pretty clear. I will pay only 1 food, and I want to move to this space up here, to this swamplet here, but not the fast. I already explained to you I can only carry up to 5 tokens here. Currently I have 6. Those have their own, so these are being fine. I have 12 food spaces, but only 5 of those resource spaces, and the victory points, of course, or the status points, doesn't count towards this carrying limit. So I could decide to leave this rope behind here, or I could trade this with another player, and I really don't have to be on the same space because it's being considered. You have your chain, you're meeting up, you're sending someone from your clan to do the trade here. So blue will ask the yellow player, hey, are you interested in getting a rope? A rope is pretty cool because it allows you to move over the mountains basically pretty much easily. So what would it be worth to you? And I think yellow said, oh, I can give you a food cube for that, for example. And blue is really thinking, hey, a rope is a rope. Maybe if you give me 2, I would agree to that. And I think yellow says, a rope is tough. I'm not considering to do rope making here, so why not? So yeah, yellow agrees to that. So yellow gives a blue player 2 food, which he puts onto his camp basically, and therefore he gives 1 rope to the yellow player, who's a happy camper now and will be able to climb over mountains much easier. And again, you can really trade with whatever you want. You could also offer Tim a status point, for example, or 2 or 3. That's really up to you or up to the players how they, let's say, interact with each other. And which, again, this is definitely a very cool mechanism in this game and works really well. But going back to the movement, he already paid his food, so he will move to this swamp area, and that was basically the turn of the blue player. Then we come to the yellow player, and yellow definitely wants to go after this water tile here because he wants to have the clay in order to invent pottery here. So I think he will pay additional 2 food points here, or food cubes, and I think let's go for this desert and let's go for this water tile. And here you see we have discovered the cart. So if you would invent or develop this tile, we would be able to carry way more items, and this is really valuable. But I need bronze in order to develop the cart here. But I have also discovered a tile which is adjacent to a holy place, and this also grants me those 3 additional bonus tiles on those holy places. So also a great way to gain some actual victory points. So those just go to the camp of the yellow player, and once I have discovered this holy place, I will also reveal the 2 tiles that are adjacent to this holy place. So here we have the canoe, which helps me, I think, for once carrying, and I think I can also move faster. Let me check. No, the booklet reveals it. The canoe allows me to carry 5 additional items once I am in a canoe, which is also pretty powerful and can also bring me 4 additional victory points. But still, I'm after the pottery here, so I want to move to this water tile, but I would not move there. I would rather paddle there, and paddling on a water tile also costs me only 1 food cube, and this allows me to paddle to this water tile here. But coming back to blue, blue needs wood, so I need to go to the forest, and therefore I have to explore the forest space over here. So his main action will be to explore those, 2 tiles, I guess. So he pays 2 food cubes and reveals, oops, this forest tile. Oh, here we get the axe. Wow, axe is also pretty good. And this desert tile, which lets him discover horse, or the horse riding, I would call it. It's pretty expensive, as you can see, but it also could grant me 5 additional victory points. And again, the horse helps me to increase my movement, or more exactly, helps me to carry additional items if I feed my horse appropriately. And he's still after some actual wood, so he needs to move into the forest area. And moving into a forest area costs you exactly 2 food, which he easily pays. And so he's allowed to move to this tile here. Yellow wants clay, and he wants a lot of clay. So he decides to take a work action at the water tile, which he currently is. So he's allowed to roll 2 dice. Oh, that's already 2. That's great. He pays 1 additional food. This allows him... He could now decide he could take a chance and just roll the dice. But again, this could lead to a 0. But he could also pay this additional food to directly gain 1 point. And I think this is what he will do. So he has now 3 working power here. And for 3 working power, he could take either combination of flax or clay. He could also go for stone, or I think this is flint. But I think right now he wants to focus on clay. So he takes 1, 2, 3 clay. Again, we have exceeded our capacity, but we are spending this clay anyway, as we still want to discover pottery here. And let's do that right now. This is again some kind of free action. So he pays 3 clay. So this could be 3 stone or 1 bronze. He has 3 clay, and he also has to pay 1 food cube basically, and then he would be allowed to discover pottery, which is definitely a big deal. For once 3 points, but he will definitely have to gather some food in the next turn, though this is definitely a great help here. I think he will still move, and he will directly move to this grassland tile here. This costs him 1 additional food, and in the next turn he would go after a gathering action. Blue's in the forest. He wants to take a work action. So again, he would roll 2 dice. That's 2. And I think with 2 wood, he's actually pretty fine. So he takes 2 of those wood tokens. They look kind of strange, but this is, I think, some kind of firewood or something like that. But he will spend it anyway in order to invent the bow. So for once, he will have to spend 1 rope, which he happily does. And he also has to spend 1 wood, which he also has. And of course, on top of it, you have to eat something. So he eats up 1 piece of food as well, and this allows him to invent the bow. Awesome. And this would grant him 3 additional victory points by the end of the game. Blue is also pretty low on food, only 4 remaining, so he decides to stay where he is, and I think in the next turn he will also gather some actual food. Yellow has even more problems here, and I think he definitely needs some more food as well. But he's on a grassland, and grassland is always great when it comes to gather actual food. So he checks the food gathering table, and here on the grassland he gets 3 food cubes basically free. He's also allowed to roll 1 food die. So let's see. Oh, unfortunately that's only a 0. Luckily, he also has the pottery just discovered, so this allows him to spend any one unprocessed resource, or any one resource. I think here it really doesn't matter, so I think let's just go for this tendon here. Not sure if that's a good idea, but I want to show that to you. And this would give him 2 additional food, and he's allowed to roll 2 extra food dice on top of it. So and this is 2 more. So in total, he just collected 7 food, which is definitely a big deal. Coming back to blue, he wants to do the same. So, but he has different returns. So for once he only gets 2 food cubes because he's in the forest. It's not that productive than being on a grassland tile, but still he would be allowed to roll the food die as well. Oh, that's a 2. Oh, he's pretty lucky. So in total he has now 4 of those food cubes. He could now decide to use the pottery of the yellow player. For once he could ask him, hey, do you want to whatever help me in respect to food here? Can I use your pottery? What can I give you in return? Or he could just say, I give you 1 victory point, then the yellow player cannot deny it, then he would be allowed to use all of the tiles of the yellow player. And I think this is what he will do. He will just pay 1 victory point to the yellow player, and so he's now allowed to use the pottery or all the tiles of the yellow player in this turn. Right now this is only the pottery. Again, he has to pay 1 resource and he pays 1 wood. He has that definitely over, or he doesn't need it right now, and this gives him 2 additional food, and he would still be allowed to roll 2 food dice, and these are also 4 more. So in total this brings him up to 8 food. And of course I missed to move the turn track here accordingly, so not sure if you're on 6 or 7 at this point, but of course after each round you move the turn track 1 step ahead, and when you reach a new age like the Neolithicum, you would turn all the inner tiles face up. And the inner tiles are all those tiles here. So this is definitely also a great way to progress the game, because you don't have to spend your movement. Especially in a 2-player game, we figured out that this is something that helps you greatly, because you cannot really move into all directions of the game board, because the food price is relatively high for some of those areas here. And I think I will stop it here. I've shown you really not all of the, let's say, actions that are possible. You can still decide to do a fishing action here. A fishing action could be supported again by a pottery or by a fishing pool, by the hoop net or by the spear. You could go hunting in order to gain those deer here, for example, and with this deer you can do later on a butcher action, which give you for once leather, antler or this tenon, or also additional food. And I also haven't shown you how to offer at a sacred place, but this is really pretty straightforward. So for once you have to stand adjacent to a holy place. You are never allowed to move onto it, so this is really holy. You get cursed forever, and then you pay whatever you have to pay. So in this case there are 3 different possibilities on what you could spend. So for example, if you pay 2 processed unlike different processed materials, you would gain 3 victory points. Then you would just mark it down on the holy place. So this space is now gone, so you can no longer offer for this space here, and you are never allowed to sacrifice twice at the same holy place. That's important to mention. If you pay whatever 3 different processed materials, you gain 5 victory points by the end of game, and so on. There are also tons of other inventions and abilities which you're about to invent, or which you can invent in this game, like the knife or the spear, the cloak, the basket, which also helps you to gather some actual food or allows you to carry additional material when you move, or this jug or water bag, which always gives you 1 food doing around but costs you 1 victory point by the end of the game. The replayability in this game is really immense. I really hope you enjoyed my little preview of Epoch Early Inventors here. I really have to say it's a great game. It's definitely very deep. You have to put a lot of thought into it, so you really have to do a lot of brain exercises. Say, okay, where do I start? What do I need next? Maybe also think 2 or 3 steps ahead of that. How you are, let's say, engaging with the other players. Do I want to share? Do I want to trade with other players? And where would I move next and stuff like that. So there's a great way or great potential to do a lot of optimization in this game. I already mentioned it, all those overviews might seem a little bit overly complicated, but you really get behind all the mechanics pretty easily. You might also really reconsider putting all those charts on one table, for example, that you can see it on a single glance or stuff like that. This was really the feedback I received, but again, you really get behind this, let's say, exercise pretty easily once you play 3 or 4 rounds of the game. Really, the first 3 or 4 rounds are definitely something what I'm doing here, what am I supposed to do. You just collect some resources, but then you figure out, okay, this was completely useless, I don't need that. But again, this is really a learning curve, and you need to play this game at least 2 times in order to get behind everything and to understand what you are actually doing. The campaign on Kickstarter lasts at least 2 additional weeks, or at least a little bit more, so there's still plenty of time for you to check out the campaign. Of course, you will find a link in the description of this video. Hope you liked it. Hope to see you soon in one of my next videos. And yeah, until then, bye bye.